The title of my message this morning is Get Your Mind Right. A few months ago, we were out with Brother and Sister Werkheiser, and I can't remember exactly the question that they asked, but they looked at Sam and they asked a question that it was just an obvious answer. It was something like, do you want ice cream? I mean, what kind of answer is there to that question other than, yes, of course I want ice cream? But out of the blue, Sam just looked up and said, no, why would I want that? What kind of 8-year-old would say no to something like, do you want ice cream? A crazy person. And without missing a beat, without thinking twice about it, Brother Werkheiser just looked back at him and said, get your mind right, son. And ever since then, it has been a running joke, a running statement with us. Anytime we get together and somebody says something that's just a little crazy or a little off the wall, we'll just look back at each other and say, get your mind right. Get things the way they ought to be. Get your mind straightened out. Well, now, church, what I want to ask you this morning is, do you want to go to heaven? If you answer no, then you're just crazy. There's no other answer that I can give you outside of the fact you've lost a few too many brain cells and you need to go back and find some along the way. But whether or not your answer is yes or whether it's no, my answer, my response to you is going to be the same this morning. Get your mind right. If we're going to make it to heaven, it's going to be because we have gotten our minds right along the way and got our attention focused on the Lord. It can't be distracted by everything else going on. It can't be distracted by the situations of life that we're faced with, but we've got to get our minds focused on the Lord. Now, the first question that I have to address in this or ask in this is, what is our mind? The mind is more than simply the brain. When referring to the mind, most people look at it as the seat of human consciousness. This means that it's where our emotions are processed, our thoughts and our convictions are processed, where everything we do comes from that mind. You see, every one of you sitting in this place today has been breathing since the moment you walked in. Sister Mariah just yawned back there. She was breathing extra deep. That's an involuntary response. Not a single one of you have had to sit there and think, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. It just happens. You see, your brain takes care of that. Physically speaking, medically speaking, there are synapses in your brain that fire whether you think about them or not. They just fire because your body sends an impulse to say, I have too much carbon dioxide, I need oxygen. So it fires that, your diaphragm goes down, which makes your lungs, there's a whole lot of medical explanation that I can go into here. It makes you take a breath. Let's just leave it at that. While your brain is what caused that, your mind really wasn't involved in that whatsoever because you weren't actively thinking about it. You weren't actively having to work or labor to do that thing. You see, church, we've got to get to a point and an understanding that our brain isn't going to get us to heaven. But our mind, that active thought process, that work that we've got to do to get our hearts right is what's going to get us to heaven. It's going to take action all along the way and steps going forward. It's not just something that happens inerrantly, but it's something we have to work for. Our minds, in the world that we live in, are constantly flooded with negative thoughts, feelings, and emotions. I've made the statement before. Brother Jordan will be able to attest to this because I did it to him just this week. If you were to go and mow a 10-acre yard and you were to miss a 2-foot by 2-foot square in the middle of that yard, guess what everybody's going to notice? They're not going to notice that the 10 acres was mowed. They're going to notice that you missed a 2-foot by 2-foot square right in the middle of that thing. And what in the world is wrong with you that you would miss that little bit of grass? I can tell you, like I said, I told Jordan this week, he was mowing at headquarters. And there was just a little tiny strip of grass. He mowed all that yard and did a fantastic job doing it. But what was it? I called him and said, hey, buddy, you need to bring the mower back around here. You missed this spot right here. You got to come back and get it. Because our nature as humans is to see the negative things. That's just the way we're wired. That's the way we go about doing things. But church, I'm telling you today, it's time for us to get our minds right. It's time for us to stop looking at the downs of everything, at the negatives, at the bads of everything. I want to share with you some science, some statistics here this morning. According to the National Science Foundation, an average person has about 12,000 to 60,000 thoughts per day. That's a big gap if you didn't realize. There's a lot of smart people that have a lot of thoughts, and apparently there's a lot of not so smart people that don't have as many thoughts. But of those 12 to 60,000 thoughts, 80% of them are negative. It has a negative impact on your mood and outlook on life. Thinking negative thoughts can make you feel sad, afraid, angry, hopeless, and negative in general. These emotions taint the way you view the world. When everything and everyone has ill intent, at best you'll be guarded and untrusting. You may be hesitant to try to say something because you're imagining a negative outcome, and you may avoid potential opportunities because your negative self-talk is advising you against it. Negative thinking inhibits your ability to achieve goals. For any objective, you have things pulling you towards your goal and other things pushing you away. When you think negative thoughts about achieving a goal, you're much less able to accomplish it. It's like walking through mud versus gently going with the flow of the water. Brother Jordan, come up here just a minute. Are you thankful for Brother Jordan? I'm thankful for Brother Jordan. I wouldn't have nobody to preach with if he wasn't here to help me along the way. He helps me on a lot of things. We'll talk about those here in a few minutes. In short, negative thinking makes us unmotivated to make anything better. Brother Jordan, I want you to go and I want you to just pick Brother Rick up this morning. No. As he's standing in that or sitting in that seat, I want you to go just pick him up. No. Why not? That's a negative thought. Yeah. Why won't you go and do it?
I want to.
Because that's a negative thought. Mm-hmm. Why don't you just go and do it already?
No.
He knows the outcome.
You see, his mind is negative, and this is something comical that we can talk about. Because, no offense at all, Brother Rick, but my mind's a little negative on that one this morning as well. But you see, the outcome of it was because he thought, the first words out of his mouth when I said, why not? You see, it evolved along the way. He said, no. Well, why not? Because I can't. I don't remember what the second one, there's something else. But then he said, I don't want to. Because he thought he couldn't do something, he wasn't even willing to try to do it. The negative thought that I cannot do something impacted him to a point that he wasn't even willing to try to accomplish the goal that was set before him. You see, but it didn't just stop there. It evolved after that point. The fact that he thought he couldn't do it made him get to a point that he didn't even want to do it anymore. Church, if we allow negativity to come and take root in our hearts and our lives and affect everything about our lives, you see, I can look out and I can see things in my life that I have no control over changing. There's certain things that I can't fix. You see, my health, do I have the ability to eat a healthier diet that will help me? Yes, I do. Do I have the ability to go and exercise and that will help my overall health? Yes, I do. But you know what? There are plenty of diseases that can still come on me no matter what the diet that I have is, no matter how much I exercise, no matter how in physical shape I may get, there are still things that can come against me and can attack my body that I have no control over. But with all of those things, if I look at the negatives of those and apply them to everything else, what will end up happening is I'll say, I can't do anything about the things that I can make an impact about. Because I may develop cancer along the way, I'm going to eat whatever I want to eat. I can't change that, so I'm just going to do whatever I want to do. Because I may develop some other disease, and it may kill me along the way, I'm not even going to attempt to exercise or make my life better anymore. I'm going to sit on the couch every day and do nothing with a bag of Cheetos and a bowl of ice cream and call myself happy. You know what's going to come of that? A little word called diabetes. What will happen is my body will begin to attack itself. The sugar in my body will begin to combat itself to a point that my body can't function anymore. My other health will begin to decline in all different ways. And if I don't do anything but sit on that couch with a bag of Cheetos and a bowl of ice cream, guess what? I'm going to get to be about 3,000 pounds, and I'm never going to get off that couch because the negative thoughts impacted me to a point that the things that I could do something about, I was no longer willing to try to do something about. Thank you, Jordan. You can sit down. If all we think about is, or if all we think is negative about our home, it doesn't drive us to make our homes better. Guess what? It makes us say this place is a dump. It will never be nice. It will never be what I want it to be. Just let it sit and ruin. It doesn't cause us to want to make it any better because our negative thoughts have impacted us to a point that we no longer want to try. If all we think is negative about the church, why would we ever put our efforts, resources, or abilities into trying to make it better? Let me just say here for a moment, I'm trying not to veer too far from my notes, but I feel it's important to say, if the only thing that you see about the church is negative, get your mind right. I'm not saying that out of a harshness or a callousness. I'll be the first one to say, I'll be the only one to say, because I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands. I do not think the church is perfected yet. Do I think we're striving for that? Yes, we're striving for that. Do I think God will get us there? Yes, I think God will get us there. Do I think we've achieved it right this moment? No, I don't think we've achieved it right this moment. I can take that though, and I can allow those negative thoughts to impact me to a point that I say, there's nothing good about the church any longer. It's all bad. We're not where we're supposed to be, so obviously nothing good can be. Let me tell you something. The devil wants nothing more than for us to start thinking there's nothing good about the church anymore. Because I'll tell you something, if we begin thinking that, it won't be long before we start thinking there's nothing good about Jesus Christ anymore. Because we can't think about one without thinking about the other. It's going to lead us down a path that's going to get us in trouble over and over and over again. Church, if we can't have any positive thoughts about the church of God this morning, it's time for us to get our minds right and get in the altar and find what God would have for us. Listen, I said it. There's things that I'm upset about right now, that I'm aggravated about right now, that I don't agree with right now. But listen to me. If I allow myself to get to a point that I say, it's all bad, then I'm going to fail. I'm going to fall along the way. And I'm not only at that, I'm going to miss an opportunity to stand up and make a difference for everybody else around me. I'm going to miss where God would have me to work and to labor for Him and to do the work that He's called me to do. Church, if we can't see positive anymore, it's not because everything's bad. Let me just go ahead and tell you, I don't care how bad your life is, everything in your life is not bad. If you think everything is bad, it's time to get in the altar and find hope for tomorrow again. It's time to get in the altar and let Jesus straighten some things out and get your mind right. Get to where things need to be between you and God, and things will become good again. If all we think is negative about the situation that we are in, it doesn't cause us to make it any better. It cripples us to the point that we become trapped by the weight of the things that we carry. Listen, I'm just going to let you in on a little bit of my week. I believe when we left yesterday afternoon, Brother Jordan and I were looking it up, calculating it up. I think we've worked a little bit over 60 hours this week at headquarters trying to get ready for BTI to happen. We've both been busy doing other things as well. We had responsibilities at the local church. We've had responsibilities at our home. Sam's had baseball games this week that we've taken him to make sure he was at. My life has been a little bit busy, a little bit hectic. And Sarah called me Friday night late while I was still working at the office and said, hey, I completely forgot. A couple weeks ago, remember Sam told us that his shower was broken. So I went and thought about it for a minute and said, oh, I do remember that. For those of you that know anything about hardware, that know how to fix house and home repair, the only thing that was wrong with it was the faucet in his tub, the diverter had broken. There was nothing you could do to stop the flow in the faucet and make it go to the shower. Well, you see, for Sam, that's not that big of a problem, because I'll just tell him, hey, go use the shower in my bathroom. Move on with life. But you see, BTI's next week, which means we've got people staying at our house and we need our second shower to work. So Sarah said, hey, don't forget about this. We got to get it fixed. So yesterday, I woke up, had a couple things to do, started working on them, and said, I'm going to go fix that shower. I went over, looked at it. Once again, for those of you that know home repair, there's two types of faucets. There's a slip joint faucet and there's a threaded faucet. I look, make sure it's not a slip joint faucet that I have to take the set screw out of before I can pull it off. It's not. It's a threaded faucet. So I grab hold of the thing and just go to ease it around and turn it. And guess what happens? I ease it around, and next thing I know, my arm's turned all the way around, and there's water going everywhere. The pipes just disintegrated in my walls. So I started looking around and saying, well, what am I going to do? I don't know how to do this. I don't know. By the way, if you see my hands today, I promise I don't have nail polish on. But Purple Power does a great job at dyeing your nails, whatever. I can't say whatever color you want. It's purple. That's the only color you're going to get out of Purple Power. But I said, well, what am I going to do? So I walked around and said, surely there's an access panel to get into the backside of this shower that I can replace the plumbing. I can get in there and fix it if I have to today. I walk around, I start looking. There's no access panel. There's no way to get into this shower. So what do? I make an access panel. I cut a big giant hole in my wall. So I get in there and start figuring out these are the pieces that are broke. This is what I need. I get up, I go to Lowe's, I get all the pieces that I need, had it all just right, did the work that I needed to do in town yesterday, got Brother Jordan with me. He helped me at the office. Then he said, hey, if you need an extra hand at the house, I'll come and help you. So I said, that sounds like a great idea. So he comes to the house, he helps me. We get it all put together, and let me just tell you something. I am not a plumber, but that was a good-looking joint. It came together just right. Every piece was measured correctly. I've never cut joints so cleanly in my life. This thing just fit together just the way I needed it to. It kept everything tight. The stub out was coming out of the wall just perfect. I said, all right, the Lord has helped us. We've got it together. I said, Jordan, cut the water on. He cut the water on, and it started going, and I said, hey, we did a good job. It worked. Drip, 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 drip. Cut the water off, cut the water off. It didn't matter that all those joints were perfect. It didn't matter that they were all tight. Guess what? This idiot forgot to put Teflon tape around the threads to get it to seal off correctly. So guess what I had to do? I had to go in and cut all those beautiful joints that I made right back out, clean it all out, pull it all back out again, go right back to Lowe's and I got smarter this time, and buy SharkBite fittings that I didn't have to deal with none of that, and slammed it all together real quick and put it up there in my shower. I said all that to tell you, stop laughing, Jordan. We got it all done, got the water turned on, not a single leak. I felt good about myself. We had done a great job. We had accomplished something. So I went around the other side so I could cut the stub out just the right length that it was supposed to and get the faucet put back on. And guess what I found? I bought the wrong faucet. It doesn't even have a diverter on the one that I bought. So it wasn't going to do any good at all if I did cut the pipe and get it all installed just perfectly. So if you go to my house right now, there's a nice copper stub out coming out of the hole where the faucet's supposed to be, but it's still sealed at the moment, so the shower works just fine. I will fix it later this week. What does all that have to do with anything? You don't understand the amount of times throughout that process yesterday that I was sitting there saying, I can't do this. I don't have time to do this. I've got so many other things on me. And guess what? I just wanted to quit. I didn't want to keep going anymore. I didn't want to do it. I was talking with Brother Jordan before we ever got started on any of it and told him, plumbing's not my forte. I don't enjoy plumbing. I understand how plumbing works. You got pressure, you got water, it's going to go somewhere. If you don't have pressure, it's only going to go downhill. That's how plumbing works, folks. I understand all that, but I don't enjoy it because every time I touch it, I fix one thing and break 7 more. It's just the way it works for me. It started wearing on me. We got done with the first set of joints and thought everything should work, and it didn't. And guess what? I was so defeated. I was so burnt out. We went and got us a bite to eat, went back to Lowe's and got the stuff we needed, and came back to the house. I don't think we hardly said anything the whole trip there, the whole trip back. We were just beat down. Because the only thing we could think about was the negatives of what was going on. We didn't think about any good that was happening. Well, guess what? When we finally got it and the water flowed correctly and it went to the shower, it didn't matter that the faucet didn't work. Finally, I was happy again because it was doing what I wanted it to do. I found some energy. I found some strength to keep going a little bit farther. Church, let me tell you, if you can't see anything but negatives in your life, you will not have a desire to carry on with the work that's ahead of you. But you gotta find some positives. You've got to find where the mind is right, where the Lord would have you at, and work in those things. Does it mean your life's going to be perfect? Absolutely not. It doesn't. If I told you that, I'd be the biggest liar of all this morning. But it means the Lord will help you through everything that you go through. I want you to turn with me to Daniel, the 10th chapter. I'm going to try to wrap this up. You see, in order for us to have positive thoughts, we've got to have a trust in God. If you can't trust God, if you can't have faith in God, you're not going to be able to have positive thoughts. Everything around you is going to be negative because the world is negative. This earth, it's going to be burned up because of how bad it is. But we've got to have that trust in God. But Brother Christopher, you don't understand. I've been praying and praying and praying, and God's not come through for me. God's not done what I need him to do. Well, Daniel, the 10th chapter, we're going to start at the 2nd verse. The Bible says, in those days, I, Daniel, was mourning 3 full weeks. I ate no pleasant bread, neither came flesh nor wine in my mouth. Neither did I anoint myself at all till 3 whole weeks were fulfilled. And in the 24th day of the 1st month, as I was by the side of the great river, which is Hiddekel, then I lifted up my eyes and looked, and behold, a certain man clothed in linen, whose loins were girded with fine gold of Uphaz. His body also was like the beryl, and his face as the appearance of lightning, and his eyes as lamps of fire, and his arms and his feet like in color to the polished brass, and to the voice of his words like the voice of the multitude. And I, Daniel, alone saw the vision, for the men that were with me saw not the vision. But a great quaking fell upon them, so that they fled and hid themselves. Therefore I was left alone and saw this great vision, and there remained no strength in me, for my comeliness was turned in me into corruption, and I retained no strength. What we see here is a depiction of Daniel going through a time in his life that he needed help from the Lord. He needed an answer from the Lord. Calm your mind down, Sister Cammie. Get your mind right now. She told me if I preached about Daniel, she was going to sit over there and sing a song. And she just looked at me and gave me the look that I know she's doing it. So I'm going to tell you, Sister Cammie, get your mind right this morning. But you see, Daniel was going through a time in his life that he needed help from the Lord. So what did he do? He began to mourn. He began to fast. He began to pray. He began to seek God. But you see, this went on, the Bible says, for 3 full weeks. When I read this account, when I read this story, I don't think about it just as, I've got this need, I'm going to fast about it and move on with life. You see, I think we've all been in the place before that we've done that. We've had a need in our life, we've fasted about it, and we've moved on. But you see, the way I read this and the way I see it is when it says he was mourning. It wasn't just that I'm going to fast about this, God's going to help me, I'm going to go. No, he was at a point in his life that he didn't want to eat. He didn't want to go on. He didn't want anything more to come into his body. He didn't want that. He needed that desperate help from the Lord. And this carried on for 3 weeks. How many of you have ever fasted everything for 3 weeks? I can't say that I've done that. I can say that I fasted for 3 days. And by the end of that 3 days, my stomach's eating my backbone and I'm hurting because I want something to eat so bad. If you work any kind of physical job at all, if you fast for very long, you start noticing the effects of that fast. You start feeling a weakness come over your body, the energy leaving your body. There's nothing, no strength that you have anymore for that. This carried on for 3 full weeks with Daniel. And the Bible says he had no strength left in him. It was negative. Not only did he have no strength left in him, but the guys that were with him abandoned him. It says there was a great quaking that came upon them and they hid themselves in fear. They just abandoned him. They left him. He didn't have any strength. He didn't have any friends. He didn't have any help. 21 days he was seeking God and not getting anything. But thank God it doesn't end there. The 10th verse says, and behold, an hand touched me, which set upon me my knees, set me upon my knees and upon the palms of my hand. And he said unto me, O Daniel, a man greatly beloved, understand the words that I speak unto thee, and stand upright. For unto thee am I now sent. And when he had spoken this word unto me, I stood trembling. This angel said, listen to me. Listen to what I'm going to tell you. He said, then said he unto me, fear not, Daniel. For from the first day thou didst set thine heart to understand and to chasten thyself before thy God, thy words were heard, and I am come for thy words. But the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days. But lo, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, and I remained there with the kings of Persia. Now I am come to make thee understand what shall befall thy people in the latter days. For yet the vision is for many days. And when he had spoken such words unto me, I set my face toward the ground and became dumb. What does all this have to do with what I'm talking about this morning? Church, what this has to do with what I'm talking about this morning is the angel said something very important to Daniel. He said that I have been fighting 21 days against the prince of Persia, trying to get there to help you. But the important part wasn't that. The important part was the very first day, the very first time you called upon the name of the Lord, I was sent to help you. Church, God is not withholding from us his help and his strength here this morning. It doesn't matter the situations in our life that we may be facing. It doesn't matter the things that we may be going through. Brother Christopher, you don't understand. We've been walking through this. We can't see the end of it. We can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. Let me tell you something. God has sent help along your way. He's there to help you and strengthen you. But the devil may be stopping it, the help from coming right now. It may be slowing it down. It may be causing that distraction to come. But let me tell you something. God's help will come through for you. It will come. There's a song came out last year, I think it was. The chorus of the song says, I trust in God. I've listened to that song probably 300 times in the last 2 weeks. You see, I listened through the whole song, and have you ever listened to a song and it's nothing more than a song? It's background music. It's just something that's playing, and you know the words of it. You may even sing along with it, but you're not really paying attention to what it says. Well, that's what this song does for me over and over and over again until it gets to the bridge. And every time, it doesn't matter that I've listened to that song 300 times. I'm sitting in the truck and I'm listening to the song and not paying attention to what's going on around me, not paying attention to this song at all until the bridge hits. And the next thing I know, I'm crying like a baby in the midst of this truck. Because the bridge of that song simply says, I sought the Lord, and He heard, and He answered. Church, let me tell you something. If you will seek the Lord, He is hearing your cry. There is not a single time that you have sought the Lord that He has not heard what you had to say. If you're here for BTI these 2 weeks, if you'll seek the Lord during BTI, He'll hear you during BTI. Brother Rick, if you'll seek the Lord during BTI, I know you're laboring, you're working to help out with things these 2 weeks, but I know your body's also hurting. If you'll seek the Lord, He'll hear you during these 2 weeks. But you see, it's not just BTI. If we'll seek the Lord in everything that we do, it doesn't matter that the enemy may send those attacks against us. It may withhold the angel, the help of the Lord, from coming for a period of time. Guess what? He's heard us, and He will answer again and again and again. He's faithful. He will not fail us, church. Stand with me this morning. Brother Christopher, the things that I'm facing, the things that I'm going through, you just don't understand. I don't. I'll give you that. You're right. I don't understand everything that you're facing and everything that you're going through. But what I do understand is the fact that God has not failed. And what I do understand even more than that is the fact that if we'll hold on to Him, His answer, His help, His strength will come again and again and again to help us through whatever we face, whatever we're going through. But what I also understand is if we have no other outlook but a negative outlook, we're not going to continue to press. I don't know how many of you have heard the story, but years ago, there was a man that had found himself in the midst of the ocean. The boat that he was on to get out there had sunk. He was searching for any kind of help that he could get, and the Coast Guard sent a helicopter out. They found this man. They were able to rescue him out of the water. But as they were pulling him up to the helicopter, the rope snapped. But the rescuer had his hand on the man. Sounds like a pretty good story, doesn't it? Sounds like it would make a good movie. Well, it did. They made a movie out of it. It was pretty good. But you see, when all of this happened, if I remember right, they were about 7 miles from the coast. There was no strength in the man's body to be able to pull him up into the helicopter. So the only option they had was either to let him fall back into the ocean, go back and get another helicopter, hope he was able to swim long enough for them to get back with another helicopter and lift him up again, or to hold on all the way back to shore. You see, the man who was in the ocean had no strength left in his body, and after a very short amount of time, could not hold on any longer. But the rescuer would not let go. In fact, they said that the rescuer dislocated his shoulder and had permanent damage in his arm and his shoulder when they got back to shore because he refused to let this man go. The man who was being rescued knew his strength had failed him, knew there was no hope for anything left, had a negative outlook, and the only thing that he could do was let go. But the rescuer, listen, I've been in the back of an ambulance enough times. I've pulled up on some things that you pull up and you know it doesn't look good. It's not going to be a good outcome to this story. But then you see a little bit of life. And everything that we are trained to do as nurses, as EMTs, as rescuers, is if you see a little bit, work as hard as you can to keep it. Work as hard as you can to nurture it. That's what this man did. He said, I'm going to hold on and I'm going to get you there. He didn't allow the negativity. There was no hope in that situation. Listen, 7 miles, I don't care if it's in a helicopter, a plane, or anything else. That's a long ways. If you've ever dislocated something, let me rephrase that. If you've never dislocated something, there's a lot of pain involved with that. A whole lot of pain. The man had every reason to let go. But he held on because he had hope. Church, if we'll get our minds right, it's your choice. Listen, I'm just going to be honest for a moment. I'm trying to wrap this up as quickly as I can. I've heard over and over and over again, well, if the Lord would just help me, if the Lord would just take care of this for me, well, if the Lord would just do this for me and make everything better, I'd be all right. Listen, there's a responsibility that falls on your shoulders. If you're not ever going to find the positive in anything, if you're going to be negative all the time, don't expect God to come and fix everything for you. It's not going to happen. But if you'll get your mind right, guess what? Everything I said about the mind, you know what else it describes? That seat of emotion, that place of conviction, it's the soul. It's the same thing. We're not talking about a brain and a heart. Get your soul right, and everything else will work out. Everything else will fall into place. Is everything going to be perfect? No, everything's not going to be perfect. But you'll have the strength to hold on because you'll know God's going to get you through it. He will not fail. Church, this morning, I'm going to ask us, let's find a place to pray. Let's seek the Lord here this morning, knowing He will hear us and He will answer. But ask Him to help us get our minds straightened out, get our hearts straightened out, to see things the way He would have them seen here this morning.